If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Pretty thighs, shawty, she a dime. Demon girl, evil eyes, she be telling lies. Slim waist,
wasn't updated. All right. So today we got Dr. Liz Cole, Chief Commercial Officer at Everly Health and an experienced entrepreneur. So Dr. Cole, thanks for being part of this episode. Can you start with you taking us back and telling us about your background?
Sure. So I am a physician by training, but I also ventured into everything from entrepreneurship to focused on being a healthcare executive. And I'm happy to be here. I think for me, I've always been a digital health entrepreneur, but I'm also a lecturer at Harvard Medical School because I think it's really important to continue to invest in our students and the next generation. So I work at the intersection of clinical medicine, business, and technology.
So I didn't read your bio, and I found that you got your MD and your MBA at the same time. So I've heard that MD is pretty hard, and the MBA is also pretty hard to obtain, like the studying. So my question is, how are you able to manage your time to get both an MBA and MD?
Sure. Generally speaking, there are many programs out there that do both. They shave off some time, so they save you. It's a joint degree. And some people do an MD and a JD, which is a law degree. Some people do a MD and an MPH, Master's in Public Health. Some don't do the MD and they want to, do something like a JD and an MBA, which is more on the legal business development side. So there are all ways to earn a graduate degree combined.
I see. That's interesting because it seems pretty hard to do both at the time.
Yeah, I think I have always been fairly interested in just building my own educational platform. My parents were both teachers. I feel very strongly about, there aren't many things in life that you accumulate that people can't take away. But I think it's definitely your health, your education, the family that you invest in, the friendships. So I think if people are able to, it is a lot of loans, it is a lot of time, it is a lot of investment. But if people are able to, especially with this day and age, AI, automation, all the future of work is changing. And so if you do arm yourself with some really good credentials and degrees, you can be pretty ahead of the curve in terms of what your skill set is, what your ability to deliver is. And I recently wrote a book on this because even from my perspective, I was able to blend my business degree with my healthcare and clinical perspective in a book called Digital MD for that reason.
Yeah. So why do you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Sure. I think I really enjoy everything from the incubation period where you're thinking about idea and you're thinking about a problem that you want to solve. You want to help scale your business to reach more people because I think you want to make a general big impact. For me, it's always been inspiring to see from creation of an idea to actually seeing something get implemented and then having this magnitude of influence that you can have in a very, I would say, rewarding way, especially in healthcare. So I've always been focused on this idea of if you can understand healthcare, like medicine and business in general, but then the clinical side of things, like what does it mean for the end user? What is a patient experience? What is the physician, nurse, doctor, any of the healthcare staff experience? But on top of that, what is the technology that's allowing that to happen at scale, at a low cost, affordable way? You can make a lot of, I think, a big difference in people's lives. So that's why I went down this path.
Yeah. So the next question is, you're the VP and GM of Provider Network and Clinical Services at AMLO. So can you talk more about AMLO? Like, what makes AMLO so different from the other groups we see?
Yeah, absolutely. American Well is a company that was founded on the premise before COVID happened that you could have physicians be licensed, multi-state licensed even, and address many patients in many states 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. to answer questions and get them treatment. So we were quite early when I initially started. I was an intern actually for them in 2009. And the focus was, how do you help support many different patients get the care that they need on demand? Right now, it's become sort of table stakes. Everyone has it, but at the time, it was pretty new of a concept. So I started there really believing in the two brothers who were the both CEOs and founders. And they just were very inspiring, the way that they visualized the future, how they thought about healthcare. And I learned a ton from them. And from there, actually, I was lucky enough to start my own company because I understood and learned a lot from managing this network. I went back to that work with them in 2012. And ultimately, I learned a ton about how do you manage a network of physicians? How do you keep the quality, patient access, and manage patient outcomes? And so from then, I started my own company called Infinite MD to build out a telehealth network on my own.
Yeah, so you mentioned that Ammo's kind of, I guess, pioneered this concept. So how hard was it persuading, customers to use your products and doctors and nurses to kind of join your group?
Sure, it was pretty difficult at first because it's a relatively new concept. But if you actually show the ROI, which is the return on the investment, so for example, one doctor could see any patients at any time at scale within an hour of their time, and you can clock in, clock out. It creates flexibility for the doctor and also flexibility for the patient. It's really useful. And then when you want to get someone to buy your services, there are ways to do things such as making it feel very useful. I would say not only useful for the patient, but user friendly. And then being able to also share, we did something called white labeling, which is when you have a sort of a platform, you're able to white label things and show that payer X, if it's a health insurance company, this differentiates you. This makes you really interesting in the market. This can help more people want to sign up for you. So when you're partnering with any company, I always think about put yourself in the customer's shoes, your client, and say, what can I do to make their lives easier? What can I help them do to build their business? What can I help to do to help them save costs?
I see. So I guess recently AI has been playing a prominent role. So what role will AI play in telehealth, I
Absolutely.
guess?
Yeah, it can, I mean, all sorts of ways, right? Where everything from AI supporting something we usually do in medical field called discharge summaries. It's like after you meet with someone, whether they're in the hospital with you and they were living there and we were managing them intensely, to you had a conversation like me and you now. I'm a doctor, I manage a treatment plan for you. The AI can actually summarize everything and give you a plan. And you can even dictate it so that it is in layman terms as opposed to medical jargon, which usually in medical notes, doctors have to type medical jargon, but you can have the AI summary do that. You can augment the physician's workflow by allowing them to, let's say, even see your medical records ahead of time. And AI can summarize that for you and say, if I'm a cardiologist, instead of seeing everything that you've ever dealt with, I want to know what pertains to the heart as I see you at this moment in time that's relevant to our interaction. There's all sorts of things about AI being automated for in healthcare prior authorization, which allows someone to get covered and reimbursed for their chemotherapy if they have cancer or an MRI, an imaging of the knee. We can go on and on about AI, not only in telehealth, but also there's now image recognition, which is very interesting for pathology or radiology. And as we're thinking about telehealth specifically, now there's also an interest in not only voice recognition. So is someone likely, because they're doing interesting word switching or syntax, to likely have dementia or early onset? You could even use those sort of softer voice recognition skill sets. They're called voice biomarkers in a telehealth consult. On top of that, you can also do image recognition, where in the past, if someone potentially has a genetic disorder, especially this is true for young babies. We just wrote an article on Digital MD, the blog, last week about it, where image recognition now is not only useful for radiology pathology, but also as I'm having a telehealth conversation with you now, if you were a parent and you brought your child, there's a possibility where even as we do a video consult, the AI can say, I actually think when they're looking at pattern recognition, this baby has these symptoms, these facial features, this kind of behavioral manifestation, they could have XYZ, chromosome abnormalities or other things. And it's a easier and faster way to detect than having to go from specialist to specialist to specialist.
Hmm. Yeah, so let's go back to Infinite MD, which you co-founded. So I see that it said it was an E2E tech-enabled service platform. So why do you choose E2E as its business model, I guess?
Sure. So we started first with direct to consumer because we had a few people just asking me for advice. I am a physician by training, trained through Harvard Medical School, did my residency at Harvard. So I just knew I had a large network and I was in telehealth working for American Well. So it made sense for me to say, if I can actually find specialists that people don't have access to, and I know who they are and I know how to reach them, and I can reimburse them for the right amount of time, and I can also do medical translation from around the world, I can help support people to get access to these doctors. So we started with a few of those first, and we then realized that on an enterprise level, we could actually build a business selling into health plans and employers. So we ended up doing that as a way to transition. Many companies start like that. You know, they first test with their first early adopters and users. And I do think that as people start to gain access to care, there are a lot of employers and other health plans that are interested in learning more about it and then start to reimburse for it.
I see. So my next question is, I see that you're the CEO of Infinite MD, then you became the CMO. So I was wondering why you transitioned. Was it because you felt that your company was maybe too big that you needed to hire
No,
someone?
actually, good question. I actually felt very good that as a CEO, it was right time for me to actually move into a CMO role at Elevance. So I actually transitioned out, but I wanted to maintain the clinical stability that I could still support the team on. So I actually transitioned out so that I could take another role. I think a lot of companies, when you feel like you're at the point where you've
Mhm.
done what you wanted to do to support it, and it's time for you to move on, there are plenty of times, you know, life is long, careers are long. And so being able to actually not only have the foresight, but um, the lack of ego to say, I know where my role is best played. I know how I can support the company the best. I think is a really key character that I actually look for when I do my own hiring.
Yeah, so can you explain what the difference between Infinite MD and Amwell is? Like, are there any big?
Yeah, absolutely. So Amwell is a much larger company in terms of what they do. They do everything from urgent care to they actually have their own everything from therapists. At one point, we had nutritionists, and
Mhm.
InfinMD was mostly focused on special second opinions, so specialty care. Amwell has more of a if you have any question at any time of the day, it's on demand. InfinMD was not and is not.
Mhm, I see. So I know you mentioned about how CEOs should step down when they feel like the time is. So I mean, I see you're an accomplished angel investor. You invest in several health companies. So what quality should a startup have that would attract investors like you?
I think, I mean, you probably have heard a lot of this, but I look for not only team dynamic and entrepreneur, they don't always have experience, but I think the team has to hum and have a really good setup. Sometimes you can invest and you can also restructure the team. But also, of course, everyone talks about it's called total addressable market. So the market size has to be worth it and interesting enough so that there is an investment where they can scale and continue to grow the company. There's also, of course, market competition, and you would want to know the space. Is it, heavily inundated with a lot of startups, or are you relatively new with your idea and it's defensible, and the actual strategy that you have and the business development plan all make sense? There's also, if you have the right, not only skill set for the team of the founders and executives, but are they also structured in the right way? And then, of course, with a lot of investments, generally, I have to believe in the mission and believe in the purpose of the company. I do think a lot of startups start with, I have this tech, like, what can I do with it? And then they're like, oh, I can, use it for this patient outcome plan, but it doesn't necessarily make sense. And so, and flip side, I see sometimes people coming in, there's this huge problem. I really want to solve it, but then they don't have a total addressable market that's large enough, or maybe they don't get angel investments, but they can sort of, or maybe they do, and it depends on, but they can't get venture funding. So it's about the timing of who is willing to invest for the purpose, for the mission, and for the right size of the company.
So as an angel investor, like, what roles do they play usually? Do they help like the startup get more investments, or do they provide advice?
Yeah, they do all sorts of things. I think most angel investors really believe that they have a huge network, especially in early stage of a company. It's very important for them to leverage. So for all of my angel investments, even now, I'm always connecting them to future funding potential for not only VCs, but also thinking about how do I help them with the skill set that they're lacking? How do I let them have an intro to a conversation where they need to build this product and they don't really know where to start, or they do know where to start, but they want to run the product by to do a demo. Angels also oftentimes actually spend time with the team to redevelop the business plan. Sometimes you have to pivot, sometimes you have to change. And what's also important is that they lend some credibility. So when you have a few angels that others respect, they do diligence on the company and they realize this has a few really key angel investors. And so it helps them build their network and their not only credentialed, but also their experience in when they're building out their team.
Yeah, do you mind sharing any failed investments that you made in startups that folded?
Folded, yeah. I mean, I've done many random ones from some really successful ones to those that have basically, there was one that I looked into, which was a workforce management doing interviewing, but fast 10-second kind of speed dating interviewing for companies to not have to pay a full-time staff to manage or hire a recruiter. I've also done one that was a moving company. I've done one that was it's a solution key with image recognition to help teachers have access to a lot of different kind of ed tech curriculum. These all didn't do well, but I think it was different timing of things. And I'm happy to go into ones that have and why they have succeeded and why they haven't.
Hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I know you're on the board of several companies that are on the stock exchange market, like Sensus Surgical and Chronostats Medical. So I want to talk more about Sensus Surgical. So I know there are many companies doing robot, I guess, robot surgery stuff. J&J is trying to develop one. I
Mhm.
guess the most famous one we have in the market is the Vinci robot made by Intuitive. So how is a Sensus Surgical different from what like Intuitive is doing?
Sure. So it was a plan for us to actually continue to run it, but just as you may or may not know, we have recently sold it to a company called Carl Stores. So I've stepped down from the board like the rest of the board has in the last month. It is a company I think that we were trying to differentiate with its ability to rotate and the way that it could actually reduce sort of strain on a surgeon. We are now focused in building quite a lot of other things like using data and data analytics actually to actually send things to the cloud and build a lot of enhancements around it. But you're right. I think Da Vinci has been a leader in the entire industry. And so we wanted to create some alternatives to that.
I see. So I mean, I think recently there was a surgeon in China. He removed a lung tumor from a patient that was 5,000 kilometers away. So,
Mm.
I think regarding remote surgery, do you think it is safe as what happens with the machine lag? Like the patient could die. Like, do you think we should have more regulation, or do you think there should be more research in order to, I guess, adopt this a remote surgery tech?
I think the premise is there, which is, you don't always have surgeons everywhere, and you have a limited amount of time and the
Hmm.
travel and the whatnot. So if you're able to what we call augment the time of any kind of provider, any physician, nurse, doctor, it actually is fairly beneficial. Yes, I think there needs to be regulation, but I also think if you have the right amount of people around who are trained enough to support any kind of um, event that occurs while the surgery is active. I do think it's a wonderful way to enhance this. And I think as we start to develop this, the real time procedure and the robotics, I think will be even honed in more and more over time.
Hmm. So, you're on the board of directors for Walmart. Why do you join Walmart as this board? I was
Sure,
just
I'm
wondering.
on. Absolutely. No, I love the board. It's been very fun. It's Walmart Mexico and Central America, which is still majority owned by Walmart US, but this is in a different region. And I've always had this goal for international health, but also for things at scale. And so I love being able to have the reach because over a million people purchase from Walmart Mexico every day. And so you're seeing the ability for Walmart to actually enhance healthcare, to build different verticals. So I joined the board because the company is actively working on improving all its verticals. So not only things like remittances, so fintech, but also health tech. They do now virtual care. And on top of that, they're actually building things within their own membership. So having access to not only a telehealth network with membership, but they also do discounts on pharmacy. So all these really exciting things just really show for me how retail can have a very strong footprint into healthcare. And just to give you an example too, about 90% of Americans live less than 20-minute drive from any kind of Walmart. So you can imagine if you're looking at the across the board, their ability to have different types of experiences for people is key. Recently, of course, as you may know, Walmart shut down quite a lot of their clinics, and that's in the US, but I think in the Central America and rest of South America and Mexico, we're actually looking at other opportunities.
Yeah, so why do you think Walmart USA is shutting down so many clinics? Is it because there's competition with like CVS and Walgreens, or is it because there's
J- I, th-
is it
I, Yeah, I think one thing is that the company wanted to really focus their energy. They were running these things as a sort of a trying to do a standalone business, but it didn't necessarily make sense. And so I think sometimes companies have to reevaluate where they're spending their energy, their time, their investments. The other thing is, just like a lot of different things that have occurred during the pandemic, telehealth and clinics and whatnot have blossomed and grown tremendously, right? Because right when the pandemic hit in the first time, I think it was like March of 2020, there weren't anybody going to get their preventive care. People were not going to doctors. And so you saw a surgence of virtual care growth, of clinical growth in other areas because they were supplementing the healthcare. Now I think we've kind of reverted back to a bit more normalized care. And so there's a lot more competition that has grown during the pandemic. And so I think a lot of companies are reevaluating where they put their investment, where they put their time. As you know, a lot of companies also grew with COVID testing. I mean, so many labs all pivoted to doing COVID testing. But now they've also had to reevaluate because they have no sales now, no volume. Can they repivot their labs to do other things?
hmm Yeah, man, you talked about testing, COVID testing. So, I mean, you're currently chief commercial officer at Everly Health. So, why do you join this company?
Absolutely. I just believe in the mission of the company. It's focused on affordable, accessible care, and being able to have basically your diagnosis done in your own home without leaving for work, taking off time, waiting sometimes for like gastroenterologist consult for 3 months is really incredible when you can do it not only comfort your own home, but at affordable price that you can even pay out of pocket for. On top of that, 70% of diagnoses come from lab tests. You can't do all 70% across the board in the home, but you can do quite a lot. So everything from diabetes to chronic kidney disease screening. So for example, I love innovation. And so this year we launched this incredible kidney test that's at the home. So it's for chronic kidney disease screening, stage 1 through 5. In this country, there's quite a lot of people that need dialysis. And so if you can screen early, let's say you find someone at a stage 2, you can try to prevent them from getting to stage 5, or they're going to require kidney dialysis. And so if you're thinking about that with early detection, and now there are many drugs on the market that are coming on the market, this wasn't possible before, but you can imagine home testing, now drugs that you can treat for, and on top of that, a preventative care solution, you can really then change people's lives. So 90% of people that have chronic kidney disease don't know they have it. And when you actually think about that, that's about 37 million Americans. So across the board, people that have it, even if they're stage 1 or 2, if they know that they have it, they could start doing things like controlling their diabetes better, managing their blood pressure, reducing weight, and all these things ahead of time so that they don't progress over time and end up having to be on dialysis.
Yeah, so I think people know Everly through Shark Tank. So
Yes.
for the audience who don't know, it was on one of I think Julia Chiefs was the founders on one of the Shark Tank episodes. So I think Lori Greiner was one of the Shark was the one that invested into this company. Have you met her like in board meetings?
I haven't met her.
Things.
She's not on our board, but she's very involved with Julia. It's been fun to see because she's quite happy with her investment. And it is one of the better returns on the investment for her.
Oh, so she's on board meetings. So I assume she gets her. I know investors get like they get like a report or something.
Yes, investors always get reports. So, of course, not every single investor is on the board, but investors do get updates. If you're a CEO or founder of any kind of company, you do need to send investor updates. Sometimes they're quarterly, sometimes they're monthly. So that's where we keep everyone up to speed.
Yeah, so I mean, as Everly is a Shark Tank company, I was asked like, do you think Shark Tanks has done a lot of work to, I guess, help encourage more people to become entrepreneurs, I guess, in a way?
I definitely think so. I mean, I watch it and I get inspired. So I feel like most people, when they see it, it's interesting because even within healthcare at Harvard Medical School, there's so many people starting to be really interested in entrepreneurship. So I get asked all the time about how do you build businesses like this. And I think things like Shark Tank, things like when you hear about the Mark Zuckerbergs or the Googles or the others that have done very well, I think it's very inspiring to try to work for yourself, but also work for the greater good and have a mission and a drive. I actually write about that in my book, Digital MD, because I think there are ways to think about it where, you're not only building your legacy when you're starting a company, but you're also building your skill set. At the same time, you have a mission that you want to drive towards. And then on top of that, there is potentially financial gain. That's a great upside. So if you have the appetite for risk and you are interested in trying to change the way that our healthcare system works or any kind of system works, I think it's a really nice way to explore, even while you're a student. I started companies while I was in school plenty of times.
Yeah, I mean, so let's go. I think previously you mentioned that a lot of these testing, I guess, diagnostic testing companies have to, I guess, rethink about where to put their investment as is kind of the industry's kind of gone down with COVID testing going less. So regarding Everly right now, so how are you guys gonna adapt to the changing landscape where there isn't much COVID test kits anymore?
Yeah, we pivoted very quickly. I think it was one of those things where we learned there are still huge demand, not only on the consumer side with things that we have like food sensitivity tests, right? Where we talked about if you wait for a gastroenterologist and you have to do a food diary and whatnot, rather than that, can you take a test within a week and find your results about foods that you could avoid to that could give you more upset stomach or symptoms. So that's on the consumer side. Some people want to do more of the fertility and things that they want to know ahead of time. And then on the enterprise side, there's a whole goal for us to work with insurance companies to do testing with diabetes. And in addition, as we talked about kidney and other specific tests that are now covered, including things like FIT, which is colorectal cancer screening. There's been a lot of literature you may have seen in the press where people are now getting cancer and colorectal cancer at an earlier stage. And I think with that, we are seeing a lot of people wanting to get tested and willing to get tested. So with that, I think it's been a fascinating time. There's been speculation also of like a Princess of Wales, like Catherine, if she's potentially had colorectal cancer or other things. It's an abdominal surgery that we've been hearing about. We don't know what it is. But I think it's one of those things where people are getting it earlier. And so we are now helping people get tested.
Is Everly going to uh become traded on the stock exchange, you think, in the future?
It's something that's possible. We're open to it. It's not something that we're planning immediately. We are open to sort of any kind of opportunity to basically get access and care to more hands and more people.
So if I remember, I think Everly's headquartered in Austin. So I guess regarding your schedule, do you fly to Austin in a couple months, or do you kind of work remotely in
It's a
Boston, I
great
assume?
question. I fly to Austin very often. And I think that's important because it creates camaraderie. I also have my own team in different places. And so we also meet outside of Austin. Our team, we're trying to consolidate more around Austin and some of the centers. Now that the pandemic is sort of over, people have been traveling a lot more. But I would say, the startup space is changing a lot. Some companies are saying we're 50% remote. Some are saying remote 3 days out of the week and 2 days out of the week in office. We sort of have a blend, and the goal is to continue to, for me, to be remote. I don't plan to move anytime, but the flying it is required in order for us to keep a cohesive team.
Yeah, so you're the chief deputy clinical officer at Anthem. So I think healthcare has been on the rise. It's been a major issue for many Americans. It's also been a big issue in politics, especially. So, I mean, with your experience in this industry, what are some ways to decrease the cost of healthcare for, I guess, everyday people?
Yes. I mean, this is why I went into it eyes wide open, thinking I wanted to understand the medicine and the technology and the business. Because I think if clinicians, one interesting thing, if you see someone coming to the ER and they need a stitch, either they could stitch it for a certain billing amount, or there's something called Dermabond, which is just like a glue. Dermabond is a lot more expensive to the healthcare system, but but it saves time. And so sometimes you have to weigh the cost of an ER doc or a nurse or someone versus what we're thinking about. And pricing is really key. Gloves and other things could cost $3 normally, but in a hospital system, they charge more. So what we're seeing across the board is that if you are thinking about the healthcare and future, in order for us to keep costs low, we have to learn how to understand the business model of things, which is what I write about in the book too, in digital healthcare. In digital MD, it's the future of healthcare. There's a lot of goals for startups to spend time not only reducing the patient, I would say the patient gap of what we just mentioned, getting testing, but also affordable care. So some people can pay for it out of pocket, some people can't. And if you can't, are there ways that you can work with health insurance companies to make that accessible? It's going to continue to rise. I think in the gross GDP percentage of healthcare spend, we're one of those countries that I think it just is quite large. But I think there's also ways where startups are disrupting the way that we think about it, whether it's startups or insurance companies to patient advocacy groups to everything from automating the way that we do prior authorization. I think those are very important workforce management tools that should reduce overall spend and costs.
Yeah, so I think a big part in the healthcare cost is the cost of drugs and medicine. So
Mm.
I think we're going by the Shark Tank. I think Mark Cuban has this company where
Yes,
he's
cost
trying to
plus.
decrease the cost plus. And he's trying to get rid of like the vendors in the middle. So what do you think of this company? Do you think these vendors are the ones that are marking the price of the drugs really high?
Yeah, I think you are onto something when you ask that because I love his model. That I went to Health Evolution and heard him speak and like met with him, and we were talking about this because the goal for his company, I think, is fantastic. You've seen the company called PillPack that was bought by Amazon, founded here in Boston, and so there are all these companies that are trying to disrupt healthcare. And this is one where they're trying to disrupt PBMs. And I think when you're thinking about PBMs, and these are like pharmacy benefit management programs, there is just like insurance companies, a way for them to corner the market, or not corner, but just sort of like they have a structure of the market, and that's how they provide drugs. So it's a really interesting solution to basically say, I'm going to get drugs at a super low cost, and I'm going to add a little bit of money on top of it just to cover my margins and be able to get the drugs to others. They are now going after employers and other health plans. It could be really interesting. The health plans that have their own PBMs may want to protect their kind of space, but those that are smaller are starting to actually really hear him out. And I do think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I also heard Cost Plus makes its own drug, so that's also
They
interesting.
do.
Yeah. So I know you met Mark. So what is Mark like in person? Because I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
Because we've seen
Yes.
him on TV and stuff. So what do you feel like in person? Is it different?
I think same personality, just like very charismatic, very funny. At times, very not only very confident, but other times also willing to speak the truth or speak out loud things that people may tiptoe around in terms of how he thinks about PBMs, how he thinks about what needs to be done to change the healthcare system. I really appreciated his perspective. I think he dove into healthcare initially 2 years ago. And personally, I felt like when I met with him, he knew so much more than he started out with. And I love that he's putting this legacy together. He's already gotten his sports teams to all use his own cost plus model.
Yeah. So what advice did you receive during your career that shaped your professional development or success?
I think a lot of really great advice. I mean, from a personal level, I actually think that my belief over time was that I was competent enough to do the things I could do. And even if I was constantly failing, and there are definitely moments where you doubt yourself, but I think I believed enough in there's a little of God in everyone. You just treat people nicely, you treat people kindly, but you're also holding them accountable to things. And whether you're working on a side project with a friend to running a business with someone, you have to be very open and direct. Um, I think the other thing is also your happiness depends on the quality of your thoughts. So being able to pick yourself back up when you feel like you failed, or when you're angry or you're upset about something, is to think through, is this productive for me to go down this path? I also think when I personally am very lucky that I found people that I really believe in. So meaning I found even study buddies and friends and others who were fantastic. So surround yourself with people that elevate you and make you better and challenge you rather than people pleasers or others that are kind of um, don't always know or appreciate your vision. And I definitely believe that the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away over time. And I look forward to that. I think it's one of those things I live by. And I'll tell you why. I think I'm asked to speak in a lot of presentations, and oftentimes when you speak or when you hear other people speak, people they want something from you. They're trying to pitch you something. They're trying to ask you for advice. They're trying to. What I try to do is the opposite. Is like, what can I give to you, your listeners? What can I give to you that's helpful? Even when I used to do sales, it would say like, I really want to hear from you. Is this useful? Am I wasting your time? Can I try to think about how do I support you? So if you take that look, a look that life is optimistic, focused on growth and challenge,